not every discomfort is harm. There's a line. You need to figure out your own line, honestly. We are labeling a lot of our own discomfort as harm so that we don't have to sit in the discomfort. And that's causing people to not grow as much. Good morning, afternoon, / whenever you're seeing this, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Creative. Today, we are going to talk about disappointment and discomfort versus harm, because I think a lot of our sort of like therapy talk and like social justice culture, which all starts as a good thing, right? You learn about some social justice stuff and you're like, hey, here's a thing that I learned. We're going to talk about perpetuating harm and harm reduction and stuff like this. This has sort of become a way for people to say, like, I don't want to talk about this because it's harming me. And what they really mean is I'm uncomfortable talking about this and I don't want to do it anymore, but I can't say that out loud because that sounds petty. So I'm going to say it's harming me, because then if you keep pressing the issue, you're a bad person. And I largely think that we need to stop trying to like find moral superiority and like make somebody a bad guy. Because for the most part, most human beings on this earth are just trying to live their life. And when we start getting all fucking uppity about that, I think it's kind of a problem. So we're going to unpack this. I don't have like anything super specific to bring up as an example, but I do have something specific to bring it in from like a personal like level of like my own recovery from burnout and from my eating disorder. So we'll talk about me personally, and then I will extrapolate to the larger human experience. Okay, so in 2018, I left an abusive marriage, and leading up to this leaving, I was dieting a lot. I was going on like crazy diets. Like I did keto while I was vegan, which is you can't eat a lot of food if you're vegan and not eating carbs. Like most of the vegan food has carbs, like beans, rice, all these staple crops that are affordable. Can't eat those on keto. So I would be having like half an apple a day, and that was like all the carbs I could have, which is fucking unhinged. Just saying. I did a Whole30, also vegan. I cannot believe I did 30 days of that. So I was really into like restrictive diets to kind of prove to myself, I don't need sugar to live. I don't need beans. I don't even know. I don't know what the deal was. I mean, the deal was I had an eating disorder. So I was trying to basically exist on the least amount of food possible and the least amount of types of food possible. So if I could knock out a whole food group, I felt like I was doing a good job. Which is weird. Like I look back now and I'm like, that's a weird conclusion to come to, but okay. And I was also exercising a lot, like compulsively. I would be like falling asleep on the couch in the morning trying to put my shoes on at 5 a.m. to go running. And I'm like, instead of thinking, oh, I'm tired, maybe I should rest, I would be like, hey, you dumb bitch, you have to get out there and run or you'll die. Like it was so compulsive. I was exercising every day. I was one of those people who, like, when it was a rest day in my workout plan, I would be like, where's my rest muscle? How do I train that muscle? I was weightlifting. I was doing lots of yoga. I was doing like Pilates. I was going to the gym some days. I was going running with a friend some days. I've done 2 half marathons. I can squat a lot of weight, which is pretty cool. And then I would always kind of hurt afterward. So like, especially after cardio, right? Like running, it's pretty high impact. And I didn't know that I have a like tilted pelvis. I have hypermobility. So like I wasn't bending my knees correctly. I was getting like shin splints. I was like striking with the wrong part of my foot, and like my whole legs would hurt after a run. And I would be like, this is proof that it's working. This means that my exercise is good. Turns out I had fibromyalgia. So I read a book in early 2019 called The Fuck It Diet by Caroline Dooner. She has since sort of like distanced herself from the like diet culture message. She's mostly gardening and talking about Jesus. Or last I saw before I unfollowed her because she wasn't posting the stuff that I had initially followed her for. And that's allowed. You're allowed to unfollow people. So I read this book, and there was a lot of stuff in this book that I had like never really known. Like BMI, not actually an accurate measure of health or like anything really. I learned about the, I think, Minnesota starvation experiment, which is where they were like trying to figure out, I think, like how small a ration like people could stand to have. Hang on, I'm actually going to go look it up because it's very interesting. Okay, I got it. I found it. So in this book, I learned about the Minnesota starvation experiment, which was a World War II era study because they wanted to find out like how many calories people would need to recover from like wartime famine. So let's see. University of Minnesota, the researcher's name was Ansel Keys. He wanted to learn how best to rehabilitate starving people after the war. So first, he had to starve people. Makes sense. So 400 conscientious objectors applied to participate in this study, and 36 men were chosen. They were the most physically and mentally sound and who were the most willing and aligned with the goals of the experiment. So at first, for 3 months, they were fed a 3,200 calories per day diet. That's a normal amount of food. Normal. So 3 months on this like normal intake, and their like health markers were monitored. They walked 22 miles per week, and they did like manual jobs around the compound because these people were contained so that like all of the variables were accounted for. So they lived in like dormitory style accommodations while they were like being fed a very specific like caloric intake and like having these checkups to like measure their health markers. So then for 6 months, their calories were cut in half, 1,600 calories a day. Let me tell you, 1,600 calories a day is seen as normal by a lot of people in America. Like 1,600 might even seem like too many calories for people. This is starvation. That's a starvation level calorie amount. You're starving yourself if you eat that much. Okay, great. So let's see. Their strength and energy immediately declined, and they said they were constantly tired. And then apathy set in. They had all been strongly opinionated, conscientious objectors, but now they didn't really care about any of the things they used to care about. Next, sex and romance lost its appeal. All their thoughts became about food. They became completely fixated on thinking, talking, and reading about food. Some began to read and stare at cookbooks for hours. They were irritable if they weren't fed on time. And even though their food was bland, bread, milk, beans, or vegetables, they thought it tasted amazing. They had unlimited coffee, water, and chewing gum. And some of them became addicted to gum, chewing 40 packs a day and having around 15 cups of coffee. Not healthy, right? We're gonna get back to like my main topic. We gotta go on a little adventure first. Okay, and then they became skeletal. Their heart rate slowed down, and they were cold all the time. Blood volume shrank, their hearts shrank, and they developed edema and retained water. Their skin became coarse, they were dizzy, lacked coordination, and experienced muscle soreness. On the bright side, the whites of their eyes became brilliantly white because all their blood vessels shrank. Good God. Okay, that describes a lot of what I was going through at like the peak of my eating disorder. I was freezing constantly, like no matter what the temperature was, I was so cold. And also my resting heart rate was very low as well. And like the doctors always loved that, they were like, ooh, wow, look at you, such a slow resting heart rate. Maybe that's not great. Maybe that's a sign of I'm starving. The skin, my photos of me from like the eating disorder days, my skin is like broken out. It's really dry. It's really not good. My eyes did look pretty, right? The whites of my eyes were gorgeous. But like around my eyes, I had dark circles. I looked really tired. And I honestly looked like if you said, hey, are you okay? Like really? I would burst into tears. Like I was not doing well. And also my muscles did hurt all the time. Like I was constantly in pain, but I thought that meant that my workouts were being super effective, right? If it doesn't hurt, it's not working. No pain, no gain. These are the messages that we tell people. Then these guys started sneaking food from offsite. And remember, 36 of over 400 volunteers had been chosen because like they were the strongest sample size, you know, like these were the guys who were the most willing, the most like compliant with the goals of this study, but they started getting food from off-site and they started needing to have like chaperones. Like somebody had to go with these men whenever they left the compound to make sure that they didn't sneak back a Snickers bar. 3 men pulled out of the experience. Oof. And there were also psychological challenges. A few weeks into the experiment, one man started having disturbing dreams of cannibalism. Then he cheated by going into town and devoured milkshakes and sundaes. When the head of the experiment confronted him, he broke down crying and threatened his life. So he was discharged and sent to a psychiatric hospital where after a few weeks of being fed normally, his psychological health went back to normal. So like he was going insane and all he needed was food. So all of these men became anxious and depressed, and they did not perceive themselves as being excessively skinny. Instead, they thought that other people were too fat. So they were experiencing body dysmorphia as well, just from the physiological effects of starvation. So, holy crap, right? That's a little crazy. Then during the rehabilitation part of the experiment, he only increased, the researcher Keyes only increased their calories by like a little bit, assuming that slowly refeeding would be the healthiest method. So he increased some of the men by 400 calories a day. So they went from 1,600 to 2,000. Some by 800. So they went from 1,600 to 2,400. And some by the full 1,600. So they were back up to that 3,200 a day caloric intake. There were no improvements at all in those 2 smaller experimental groups with the 400 and 800 increased calories. The only thing that started to recover people was upping their calories above the 3,200 calorie a day start point. On average, these men ate 5,000 calories a day, but sometimes as many as 11,500 calories a day. They often talked about a hunger sensation they couldn't satisfy no matter how much they ate or how full they were. Many of them were very hungry and fixated on food for months or years after the experiment. That's crazy town, but also I'm really glad that I reread this right now because I have been in my ED recovery since early 2019, right? We are closing in on 7 years. Okay, it's been about 6.5 going on 7 years. And I have only just started feeling like I have a normal appetite again. So there was a period where I would eat. And even if like I knew I was full, like my body was still saying like, no, I need more food. Like get a little snack. I need something else. And lately I have been noticing that I've been eating like half as much as I used to for like lunches and dinners. And the thing that we really need to know about this is like, there's no morality in having to eat more food, especially in recovery from like literal harm. So this is an example of literal harm I was doing to my body. I was starving myself. I was over-exercising, which is bad for your heart. Like it is unhealthy to obsess over diet and exercise, period. End of sentence. It's unhealthy to obsess. Now, having a regular routine, like I love drinking a smoothie every day because I know that like at the end of the day, no matter what, if I eat macaroni and cheese all day, at least I had like, some good dense nutrition at the start of my day. I have kale in there, I have berries, so there's antioxidants. I'm not a big fan of like raw vegetables. I have issues with fruit, I think from the eating disorder days, honestly, because like fruit was always my dessert. And so now like when I look at fruit, I'm like, I don't know, fruit, you and me, we don't have the same bond that we used to have. So I'm still like a little iffy on fruit, which is annoying because when I eat it, I love it. But there's like a mental hurdle to get there. So anyway, a smoothie means that I get fruits and vegetables without having to like worry about eating them when they're super fresh, right? Because they go in the freezer. So not only is it like a disability accommodation to have like frozen smoothie ingredients that I can just pop in and blend up a smoothie at any time of the day, it is also like really good for me, like psychologically, to know that I always have that like nourishment available to me. I always have this very like nutritionally dense, full of vitamins and minerals and like my leafy greens and all that shit, which is important to me. I want to eat things that are good for my health and my body, But you can't force yourself to eat things that you like have to choke down and gag on. Like there was another study where they tested like ethnic foods. Here's the basics. Researchers took 2 groups of women, a Swedish group and a Thai group, and they fed each group a traditional meal from the opposite culture. So the Thai women ate a Swedish meal and the Swedish women ate a Thai meal. And when eating, also these meals had roughly the same amount of iron in them. When eating their own native food, iron absorption was much higher than eating the opposite culture's food. I mean, not opposite. It's not like there's a binary between Sweden and Thailand, but for this experiment, when given a meal from the opposite country as compared to a traditional meal from their native country, it was found that the women absorbed vastly more iron when they enjoyed food from their own country. The study then tested the same women's iron absorption when divided into 2 subgroups, one which had the original native meal, and the second group was given the same meal, but blended up in a blender into a meal smoothie. So imagine like having a curry, but it's just like, no, I can't. Okay, so the highest iron absorption was when you ate a food from your own culture that you enjoy, which means that if you're trying to force yourself to eat something that you are actively having a terrible time eating, you're not going to absorb as many nutrients. It's not as beneficial for you. So you may as well eat a food that you really enjoy because like the digestion process starts in the mouth. Like it starts with the taste. If you take a bite of something and you're like, that's disgusting, your body is not going to take as much good stuff from it. Whereas if you take a bite of something and you're like, that's really good, now your body is excited, your salivary glands are pumping, like good stuff is happening, and you are actually going to absorb more of the nutrients. So between those 2 things, number 1, Minnesota starvation experiment, which shows that you need to eat a lot more food after a period of starvation in order to recover, sometimes for years. And thing number 2 is that you have to eat food. I mean, you don't have to, you can eat dirt, but like for the optimal nutrient absorption, you want to eat food that you actually like. So diets are bad. It's like my major takeaway here. Because dieting is often really restrictive and we force ourselves to eat things that we don't enjoy because we want to change how our body looks. This is actively harming our bodies, our brains, like psychologically, it's not good for us. Physically, it's not good for us. Like, and dieting almost always, like the super, super vast majority of people who diet gain back the weight that they lost plus more. That is a fact of human physiology. And it is not a moral failing. It is not more moral to be thin. It is like simply not, because like people are thin or fat for a wide variety of reasons. Genetics, medical needs. Like I'm on a lot of medications with weight gain as a side effect. And it's like, I would rather be fat than depressed or fat than in pain all the time, Fuck off a little bit. Like, oh no, I'm fat, but I am not hurting myself every single day. And that's a big win. Okay. Now put this against like the discomfort and, like, I don't want to exercise because I don't like to be sweaty, but I know that if I exercise, I will feel really good afterward. And then I can take a shower and then I won't be sweaty anymore. But especially for neurodivergent folks, like the transition into an activity that is going to be a sensory nightmare. Like, even though I love being clean, it's still really hard to get in the shower because I'm like, it's going to be loud. It's going to be wet. It's a lot. What if I mess up the temperature and I blast myself with really cold water? There are several like emotional and mental steps that I need to take before I get in the shower. And then like even at our writing retreat. So last week I was on retreat. It was amazing. I was on retreat for like 6 days and I only got in the pool once. And I previously was like, I'm going to be in that pool the whole week. But every single time I was like, do I want to get in the pool? I wasn't just asking myself, do I want to get in the pool? I was asking myself, do I want to change my clothes, put on my swimsuit, be really cold when I get out of the pool, take a shower, and get dressed again? Like that's 5 things that suck. Balancing that against, I like to be in the pool. I like to swim. It is fun. I can hang out with my friends and we can all do something fun. Like, it's a hard sell for me. especially when I used to do so much exercise out of compulsion, it is hard now for me to find like the line between I want to do this because I know it's good for me and I know that I feel better when I do it, but it's really hard and icky. And like, that's fucking real, man. Sometimes stuff is hard and icky and you don't want to do it. That doesn't mean, I'm getting back to my main thesis of this episode. It went anti-diet culture, which is great. That's me. I'm always going to do that if I can. But like, what I really want to talk about is the idea of like, I can't say like, oh no, I can't go to the pool because I'm autistic and the sensory problems are just too much and it's harmful to me. That's not really accurate or fair. What I can say is I am choosing not to deal with those sensory issues today. We'll try again tomorrow. Like, you don't have to do stuff, but at some point I have to decide, like, do I want to have done that? Like, do I want, when I am 50, do I want to have a stronger body and less risk of osteoporosis because I started weightlifting in my 30s? Do I want that? Then I have to do the shitty part now. I have to do the uncomfortable part now, because little daily actions that we take are what get us to 10 years down the road. And it's like, as much as I love to live in the moment and stuff, we also need to connect with that future version of ourselves if we want something in the future. Like, I want to foster teenagers in my 40s. I'm going to need a different house probably. Like, we don't have the room for fostering teenagers. So like, how can I set myself up for a future where I can make that happen? And it's entirely possible that I get to my 40s and I'm like, you know what? We don't really have the money to change houses, to buy a new house, to do whatever, to renovate. And so, you know, maybe I don't get started on that dream until later. Or maybe I move my office and turn this room into a room that I could foster kids in. Like, either one of those is going to come with discomfort, whether I have to buy a new house or whether I have to renovate this room, or like any of this stuff can be annoying. Like, it's annoying to redecorate a room, but at the same time, it's kind of fun. Like, when I walk into a lot of rooms in my house, I am imagining constantly how good they would look if I like decorated them the way I want to. So like in this room, I want to have a day bed behind me with a trundle so that we can get two people in here. Like, if my sibling and their spouse come to stay, they don't have to get a hotel or an Airbnb because we've got a guest room that can accommodate them. I want that. Like, that's part of the community that I want to build, even though it's going to be frustrating to find a bed on Marketplace, to arrange the transportation of the bed, to move all of my art shit out of my room and into my bedroom or something, like whatever makes the space in here. Like, those are things that are uncomfortable. They will require me to do work that I'm not thrilled about in the moment. But the end result is that something that I want to have done will be done. And I got a little bit away from like where I wanted to go with this, like the idea of like harm versus discomfort, but I think I can get us there. So I had a friend break up a couple years ago. I had been talking to this person for like 2 months, like literally we were friends for 2 months. And they complained a lot. Like they were always very negative, I thought. Like, and I'm a soft, rainbows and unicorns kind of bitch. So they were not. Like, they are more of a like, here's what's going wrong today, kind of like a more negative outlook, which is fine. Like, you're fucking allowed to have that. But I did not know how to be like, I don't like this. So like, can you give me a digest of like the things that were bad today? Or I don't even know. I don't know how I would have fixed that problem. But one thing that was an issue was like, they would send me like a reel or a meme or something with like a very hot take. Like, they were committed to the take. They'd be like, look at this person. This person is an idiot. And I would like watch the reel and I'm like, I have no idea why you think this person is an idiot. So then I would ask and I would be like, I'm not getting it. Can you explain to me what is upsetting you about this? And then they would tell me like something that I thought was a little much, maybe. Like, oh, they mentioned this study, or like there was one post that was about ADHD and they were upset because like the topic also applied to autistic people. And so they went right to, this is the erasure of autism. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's like just a single tweet about someone's experience with their ADHD and that's fine. But they were so committed to this being like a vector of harm against their identity, against their community. And I was just like, I was not there. I was like, okay, maybe you're uncomfortable with the fact that this isn't about you, but like not everything is about you. And like not everything about neurodivergence is going to be about ADHD or autism or both. That's something that comes up like in my programs, my coaching, my writing incubator is like, it's very autistic and ADHD centric. Like most of my clients are ADHD, but you don't have to be ADHD to be in my programs or in my spaces. Like I have people coming in who, you know, they don't have ADHD, but like they have complex trauma, and that's a neurodivergence also. Depression, anxiety, like mental illnesses. Like there are lots of ways to be neurodivergent. And when we act like neurodivergent means ADHD, that does perpetuate harm because it is leaving a lot of neurodivergent people out of the conversation about neurodivergence. Posting a meme about ADHD that isn't perfectly nuanced is not harm. Like that can piss you off. That's fine. It's just not content that's for you. But it's not harming and damaging like a community of people. And like when we talk about like cultural appropriation, right? Like don't wear a culture as a costume for Halloween. That's very topical. This episode's coming out at the end of October. Some people are like, but what? It's just fun. It's just a costume. It's whatever. But by, you know, if you put on an indigenous costume that is like making light of a real culture, you are potentially even like wearing sacred symbols or doing sacred practices that like are not for you. They are of this culture. And so when we so casually just say like, oh, haha, look at me, I'm a Native American, I'm Pocahontas for Halloween, like that is perpetuating harm because it makes indigenous cultures lose even more cultural standing because we see them as just like a funny thing that can be a costume, you know? But like not every discomfort is harm. There's a line. You need to figure out your own line, honestly, because I'm not the authority on doing harm to other cultures. I certainly am not the gatekeeper of what is harm and what is merely discomfort. But I do think that on like a quantity standpoint, we are labeling a lot of our own discomfort as harm so that we don't have to sit in the discomfort. And that's causing people to not grow as much. Like if you can't be vulnerable enough to be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to sit with that, I'm going to journal about it, maybe we'll have a conversation about the thing that made me uncomfortable, like you can overcome discomfort. Harm needs to be like dealt with. And it's a lot easier to feel like, you know, I don't want to say like people are victimizing themselves, but like a lot of us do. Like if somebody's a dick to me because I'm autistic and we had like a miscommunication due to my autism and their lack of autism, like one, very real harm could be perpetrated there. But it's also my job then to say like, hey, that was a problem. Like, let's deal with that. As opposed to just writing this person off and being like, well, they hate autistic people. They just perpetuate harm against the autistic community. That's not helpful. That's not how we build community that like shows up for each other. Because if you're constantly worrying about saying the wrong thing and doing harm as if that is irreparable damage that now has ostracized you from an in-group, like that's so fucked up. We need to be together more than ever. There should not be infighting between people with ADHD and people with autism, because all the fighting should be us versus billionaires, right? Like us versus the wealthy oligarch elite, the pedophiles who are running the country and doing a cover up. Like there are real problems. And when we get confused about like actual harm versus discomfort, like a great fucking example is like LGBTQ stuff. Having a pride flag or an age appropriate book that has a queer family or a transgender child or anything in it in a classroom, propaganda says this is harming our children. Because people do not want to sit in the discomfort of understanding that they were raised in a way that maybe isn't actually accurate. It's so much easier to hold on to, well, I think gay people are bad and gay people are grooming our children and the trans people are, I don't know, destroying the world. Trans people just want to pee. Trans people just want to pee and live their lives and not get murdered on the street, okay? But for you to like deal with that, for you to get to a point, the royal you, for for people to get to a point where they understand that like people who are different are not necessarily a danger to me, that requires a lot of unpacking. And it's uncomfortable to unpack. It is really uncomfortable to sit there and be like, oh, I understand what white privilege is now. Because it's so much easier to be like, well, I grew up and I've been white my whole life, but I have still struggled. So what's this white privilege you're talking about? That must be nonsense. As opposed to sitting and thinking, oh, you know, there was that Black student in my high school who got suspended for smoking weed, even though I was smoking weed in that very same place the day before and I never got suspended or caught. Like, you need to reflect on more than just your own personal experiences and look at things in a larger context. Acknowledge the harm that has been done to different communities. Acknowledge that you don't know everything and that like your perception might not be the next person's perception. And that doesn't mean that anybody here is like purposely harming each other. I'm not sure if I made a coherent point. Please let me know your thoughts. I would love to like have more of a discussion about this. I really think we need like as a culture, especially in America, we need to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like the absolute lack of like willingness to do a hard thing just because it's hard, like that's a problem. And it honestly, it's reinforced by individualism and being like, well, you should be able to do everything all by yourself. And if you need to depend on somebody else, you're weak. No, you're not. That's harmful shit. Isolation is harmful. Fucking up your neighbor's pronouns and then being like, shit, I'm really sorry. I'm going to do better next time. That is community care. That is discomfort and a willingness to be like, I fucked up and I'm sorry. That's all we got to do. God, just connect to each other as human beings. This is going to be so important as we roll forward into this fascist nightmare. Be kind. Be willing to be uncomfortable and stop centering your discomfort as harm. Because it's not always harm. Like sometimes you're just a little pissed off or your feelings are hurt. But having hurt feelings does not necessarily mean you are being like systemically harmed. And I think we could all do with that reminder. Great. And also don't starve yourself. Okay, love you. Bye.
They'll change your approach and tell you a joke to lighten your load and help you along or sing you a song. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do.